New York City Mayor Eric Adams is under federal indictment for corruption. Yes, still. And that's because a properly constituted grand jury here in New York was presented his case and voted to indict him. But instead of preparing the case, the Department of Justice is trying to drop it. Let's talk about it. I'm Eliza Orlins, career public defender for 15 years in Manhattan, and I want to break down what's really going on with this Eric Adams case in the Southern District of New York. Now, interestingly, Judge Ho just ruled that he's not going to dismiss the case, at least not yet. A lot of headlines are focusing on the fact that he adjourned the trial indefinitely. But that's a bit misleading. What the court has actually done is appoint Paul Clement, a well-known conservative attorney, to present these arguments to the court. Because typically in criminal cases, there are arguments being made and there are two sides that are adverse to one another. However, in the case presented in front of Judge Ho, Emile Beauvais, on behalf of the Department of Justice, and Eric Adams' attorney were both in agreement. And so there was no alternative presented to Judge Ho, and he would like to hear that perspective. So he is set to continue to hear arguments in this case. But the reality is this case is a disaster for the Justice Department, for the rule of law, and for democracy itself. Essentially what happened here is Eric Adams was properly indicted by the Southern District of New York prosecutors, and then Trump took office, decided he wanted Eric Adams to do his bidding, and offered to drop the case in exchange for this favor. And that is allowing ICE into Rikers Island, making New York City not a sanctuary city, and cooperating on all fronts with the Trump administration. This is quid pro quo, this is corruption, this is abuse of power, and this is exactly what Emile Beauvais, the Department of Justice's lawyer, admitted in open court. He said, well, a quid pro quo is fine. And this is incredibly dangerous. This has led to the resignation of 8 career prosecutors in the Southern District of New York, including Scalia Clerk Federalist Society prosecutor Danielle Sassoon, who said she felt this was not standing up to her oath as an attorney. It has led to the resignation of 4 deputy mayors of Eric Adams, as well as a letter from 900 former prosecutors saying how completely wrong this is. Everyone from Chris Christie to Jack Smith to Jim Comey is sounding the alarm. If this stands, it basically gives the Justice Department a built-in escape hatch. They can prosecute whoever they want and drop cases whenever it's politically convenient for them. It's truly terrifying. So what happens next? Well, Judge Ho may still grant dismissal. The DOJ had suggested dropping Eric Adams' case without prejudice, meaning they could bring it back at any time, and Judge Ho seemed to indicate that he felt that was an unfair thing to do because then they would be hanging it over his head if he didn't comply. It seemed even worse to him. However, some of the assistant U.S. attorneys said they had additional evidence and they could have brought other charges, so it really seems with prejudice, without prejudice is not the most relevant factor. But if this case is dismissed, what happens next? Well, Alvin Bragg could bring charges in New York State court. The federal government doesn't have a say in state prosecutions. There is a process for removal of the mayor by our governor, and Kathy Hochul could take action. But ultimately, this case is bigger than Eric Adams. It's about a Justice Department lawyer standing in a courtroom and saying the law will be applied differently to you if you are loyal to the president. So we will be on standby for Judge Ho's decision. Judge Ho has a lot to think about, but so do we. Because this moment, this exact moment, is a turning point for our so-called justice system. What happens here will determine just how much corruption the system is willing to accept. Right now, that answer is looking worse by the day. Make sure you're following for all the latest updates, and thanks for being here.